Hello, class. Let's talk about organization and organizing the body of the speech. In a classic study, a college professor took a well-organized speech and scrambled it randomly by changing the order of its sentences. He had a speaker deliver the original version to one group of listeners and the scrambled version to another group. After the speeches, he gave a test to see how much each understood. Not surprisingly, the group that heard the original unscrambled speech scored much higher than the other group. Listeners actually demand coherence from speakers. It's important to note that there are a great amount of studies that show the importance of organization in effective speech making. Unlike readers, they can't go back. They can't see what has come before. So you have only one chance to reach out, grab them by the hand, and guide them through your speech. Speech organization is important for other reasons as well, because it's closely connected to critical thinking. You will gain practice in the general skill of establishing clear relationships among your ideas. It is important to have a strong sense of organization. So let's think about how you usually do things. Do you start at the middle, or start at the beginning, go to the middle, and then finish at the end? Most of us would agree that most tasks we do that. How about writing? Do you start by creating an outline of what you'll do? Write the body, go back and write the introduction, and then write the conclusion. If you don't, you might want to think about doing it this way. Essentially, what we're going to be doing is starting with the body of the speech. The body of the speech is the largest portion of the speech. Our goal then is to create strategic organization in the speech. Organizing a speech to achieve a particular result with a particular audience and creating a speech that is strategically organized. Speeches are composed of main points. These main points are the central features of your speech. You should select them carefully, phrase them precisely, and arrange them strategically. Main points for most speeches are 2 to 5. 2 minimum, 5 maximum. And for your first speech, you'll be doing an informative speech of 5 to 7 minutes. So you're probably not going to want to do 5 main points. Their main points usually come to light from the research. You've gone into the research, you've looked at the research, and they've come to light out of that research as far as what makes the most sense. Once you establish your main points, you need to decide the order in which you'll present them. The most effective order depends on 3 things: your topic, your purpose, and your audience. We're going to look at the 5 basic patterns of organization most used by public speakers. The first is chronological order. Speeches arranged chronologically follow a time pattern, or they might also follow a time pattern in sort of a to-do speech. So, for example, a chronological order might be used to explain how the Great Wall of China was built. Main point 1, main point 2, main point 3, dealing with each of the 3 dynasties. Chronological order can also be used to explain a process or demonstrate how to do something, such as the steps in laser-assisted corrective surgery. It's usually a good method for informative speeches. Spatial order is where the main points follow a directional pattern. They proceed from top to bottom, left to right, front to back, inside to outside, east to west, or some other route. For example, to inform my audience about the structure of a hurricane. At the center is a calm cloud-free eye. Surrounding the eye is the eye wall, a dense ring of clouds that produces the most intense wind and rainfall. Rotating around the eye wall are large bands of clouds and precipitation called spiral rain bands. This is also a method used in informative speeches. Now think to yourself, is mine something that follows a time pattern that I might be doing for my speech? Is my speech something that might work spatially to be organized? Causal order is where you organize main points so you show a cause-effect relationship. When you use causal order, you have two main points, one dealing with the causes of the event, the other dealing with its effects. For example, the U.S. aviation system has a growing shortage of qualified air traffic controllers, and that's a serious problem. Okay, so the U.S. aviation system faces a growing shortage of qualified air traffic controllers. If it continues, it will create serious problems for airline safety. Problem solution is another method that you can do, and speeches using problem solution order are divided into two main points. The first main point being the problem, the second main point being the solution. Puppy mills is a serious problem across the United States. Main point 2, solving the problem requires legislation and individual initiative. Notice problem solution is typically a persuasive speech because your solution is persuading us that something needs to be done. You're probably asking whatever is left is what my speech will probably be, and topical order results when you divide the speech into subtopics, each which becomes a main point in the speech. So for example, if your speech is on the achievements of Josephine Baker, you can talk about her in terms of an entertainer, a spy, and a civil rights activist. This is a great way to organize this speech. Now keep in mind there's not just one way to do this. You could probably go in order of Josephine Baker's accomplishments from the time she was young to the time she was old. In that case, you might use chronological order. Because it's applicable to almost any subject or any type of speech, this is the one that people use most often. Things to keep in mind while you are creating your main points. Each main point in a speech should be clearly independent of the others and kept separate. Also, try and use the same pattern of wording for your main points. If it follows that consistent pattern of wording throughout, it's easier to understand and easier to remember. So, karate improves your mental discipline. Karate increases your physical strength. Karate teaches you self-discipline. By starting each of those with karate increases or karate improves, it sort of gives it that parallel wording. Also, you want to balance the amount of time devoted to the main points. Because your main points are important, you want to be sure that they'll receive enough emphasis to be clear and convincing. This means allowing sufficient time to develop each main point. You don't want to have sort of a hanging main point there. Make sure that it's included in the other main points or perhaps becomes a subpoint. Once you have your main points, that acts as the skeleton to your speech. What you will do then is go in and fill the supporting materials or the supporting ideas. And these will be your examples, your statistics, and your testimony that we talked about in our last video lecture. These will be your subpoints, your sub-subpoints, and your sub-subpoints. So that's essentially how you can organize the body of your speech. Once we have the skeleton of the speech, you want to think about how you can connect pieces together. Connectives are exactly what you'll do this with. Now, you probably have done this in your English class, in which you tie the components of your paragraphs together, but imagine how much more important it is in your speech, in which your audience needs to come with you every step of the way. So there's 4 types of connectives that we'll be talking about: the transition, the internal preview, the internal summary, and the signpost. The transition are words or phrases that indicate when you've just completed one thought and you're moving on to another. Technically, the transitions state both the idea you're leaving and the idea that you're coming up to. So transitional phrases state where you are or where you've been, and then where you're going. So, for example, I have spoken so far of Cesar Chavez, the community organizer, but it was his work as a labor leader that truly etched his name into American history. You can also use an internal preview. Internal previews let the audience know what the speaker will take up next, but they're more detailed than the transitions. In effect, an internal preview works just like the preview statement in a speech introduction, except it comes in the body of the speech. So for example, in discussing how Asian Americans have been stereotyped in the mass media, we'll look first at the origins of the problem, second at its continuing impact today. You won't always need an internal preview for every main point, but just gauge whether or not you feel that you'll need it to keep your listeners engaged. An internal summary is sort of the opposite of an internal preview, in which you summarize preceding points. Internal summaries wrap up or finish a particularly complicated main point or set of main points. So in short, palm reading's an ancient art developed in China more than 5,000 years ago. It was practiced in classical Greece and Rome, flourished during the Middle Ages, survived the Industrial Revolution, and remains popular today in many parts of the world. Internal summaries are an excellent way to clarify and reinforce ideas. By combining them with transitions, you can also lead your audience smoothly to the next point. Signposts are very brief statements that indicate exactly where you are in the speech. Frequently, they're just numbers. So for example, the first cause of this problem, the second cause of this problem, the final cause of this problem. Things like, in conclusion, be sure to keep this in mind, above all you need to know, are also signposts. Depending on the needs of your speech, you might want to use 2, 3, or even all 4 types of connectives in combination. You don't really need to worry too much about what they're called, but be aware of their functions and how to use them properly. Connectives can make your speeches more unified overall and more coherent. Thanks, guys. See you next time.